Welcome back to Civil Discourse Now. I'm Mark Small. My co-host is Paul Ogden. Our guest is Pat Andrews. We're talking about TIFs. We're at Big Hat Books, 6510 Cornell Avenue, the Broad Ripple area of Indianapolis, Indiana. Big Hat Books has a great collection of books. They also have space here that you can rent for special occasions. They're really neat people. And Liz owns the place. Come on in, look at books, talk to them if you want to have a space for a special occasion.
One question I'd like to ask Pat is, who decides how these millions of dollars that accumulate in TIF accounts is spent?
Well, technically the Metropolitan Development Commission decides that, but the mechanism is that the mayor and the administration make a request of the MDC, and then the MDC always says yes.
Okay.
So at the end of the day, it's the mayor who decides that the money should be spent in specific ways.
In terms of the TIF and all these different TIF accounts, I want to say TIF funds, but I guess that's sort of almost redundant, or I guess maybe it's not redundant actually. What's the harm in this? What's the harm? And doesn't it spur development? Isn't this something that's good?
It doesn't always spur development, and there have been some abuses of TIFs most recently.
Okay, like what?
Well, most recently, the mayor took $98 million, or floated a $98 million bond that the downtown TIF will have to repay through the property taxes it's gathered, and it gave that money as a loan to a private developer to develop the north and south field. The private developer putting in only $6 million at most of his own money.
Why didn't that private developer just go to a bank and get a loan?
He couldn't secure a bank loan, and
Why? Why was that?
Probably because it's not a good time to be making this kind of a development in Indianapolis. And the types of things they were putting in, they want to create a new Broad Ripple downtown. They're putting in a boutique hotel, which would compete with the other hotels, and they're probably overbuilt in hotels. Office space is minimal, but they were doing that. We can go on and on, but the TIF money, this is a brand new use for TIF funds, and it's against the law for the city to co-sign on a loan for a developer, but to actually secure the loan and get the money is evidently okay.
What are some other examples?
Well, some of them, the downtown TIF worked. And it actually takes in far more money every year than it needs to pay the bonds that it floated. So that's where it's become a slush fund, where those extra funds have accumulated. The city should really be saying, okay, we need to return that to the regular taxing units, or pay those bonds off early. Get out from under the debt and dissolve that TIF. It's working, so let's use it to its optimum. Instead, it's being used as a slush fund in a way. In other areas, they just put in a road, and then development houses. Up in the northwest, I believe, is the Dow Landco TIF. Dow seems to come back every so many years, and they refloat some bonds for Dow, and that TIF remains for a specific Dow purpose, rather than a general development purpose. So that's something that should be debated at least. It should be thrown out in the open and have the community debate how it wants these monies used.
When did TIFs first come into existence in Indiana?
I've heard that, but I don't think I would remember it correctly. So it's been a while.
So these have been around, but they've just been recently used on this widespread basis?
It's probably more accurate to say that there have been TIFs for a while. The United TIF, that's over 10 years old. I mean, the downtown
TIF,
TIF.
you're talking about the TIF by
Yeah,
the
you're
airport?
the HUD began using TIFs for sure. I don't know how many might be older than the HUD administration. And then it kind of, creation of new ones sort of died down, and now,
So the TIP was created so that we could entice United Airlines to move here to put their mechanical hub in, and they got tax breaks and money and then folded.
now that's what I'm more familiar with. That's the one, I live in that corner of the county, and that's the one that affects my township. And maybe that's the best way to answer your question, is that example. Yes, the state, I think it was abandoned, the state and HUD got together and they enticed United. There was a big nationwide competition, and United was going to come, decided to come here.
Actually, it was buy. It was buy.
Was it buy?
Yeah.
Okay. I know that just after the final deal was struck, Goldsmith got to come in and take ownership of it. But so the United was to come, all the promises, oh, it was going to be great. You know, it was going to bring new housing into Decatur Township. We have no commercial to speak of. You can't buy a new shirt, new shoes, anything in Decatur. We have one restaurant where you get a menu, two now, where you get a menu brought to your table. So the things that we needed, you know, this is going to be fantastic. And Wayne Township, we were all going to become, we were all going to get what everybody else had. So what happened, unfortunately, United folded. And they found some more people to rent the space.
Was
But
that Comlex?
Complex is one of them. But they created TIFs because United, you will recall, that maintenance base was put on airport property. Airport property is property tax free. TIFs operate on property taxes. So what they did was the building would be tax free, the land would be tax free. Any tools in there that were owned by United would pay a tax, the business personal tax. But they created TIFs in Wayne Township, north of the airport. They created TIFs in Decatur Township, south of the airport. They took the, over in Warren Township, they made a TIF of the Naval Air Warfare Center. And there was a piece, they made a TIF in Lawrence, and all of those pieces all are the United or now airport TIF. And then so United left, we're still paying off those bonds. They should be done, I think it's 2015. But they did something curious there too, is that when Ameriplex came along, in the Goldsmith era, they made a sort of a double stack TIF. I don't really know how to describe it any more than that's unique in Marion County. But the United TIF also now includes an Ameriplex TIF.
Okay,
So we have to pay off Ameriplex bonds, which were just for streets now, but they don't get paid off until 2023. So now we have a TIF that could have died in 2015, now can't die until at least 2023. So there's no drop dead date on the TIF. And they're robbing that TIF. The Ameriplex TIF, they're robbing it to help pay a TIF that's not functioning well enough elsewhere in the county.
Okay, so the United TIF was to benefit a business that was on tax-free real estate, so they didn't have to pay property taxes. So property taxes went from that township into that business and went away from the schools, went away from, or at least other monies had to go into those things?
No. What happens is for Decatur, the United property actually is in Wayne Township. but it never was going to pay property tax.
I understand.
Okay. Now what happened is the Ameriplex TIF, up until 2 years ago, all of the development in Ameriplex was within the TIF district. So all those property taxes, those new monies, went to pay United bonds or the Ameriplex bonds. So what happened in our township is that we're out of whack. We have the industrial that was supposed to help us balance out for our schools. Our schools are very expensive in Decatur Township. Right. So, but it lands on the back of the rest of the property owners. And we're not in balance. Although we have the buildings, they're for industrial use, those monies go elsewhere. So the rest of us have to come up with all the money for the school and the fire. We still have our own fire.
That's one area I wanted to get into more. You say property tax owners have to pay more as a result of these TIF districts.
You have to provide, Decatur Township Fire Department puts out any fires or makes runs within Ameriplex.
What is Ameriplex?
Oh, I'm sorry. Ameriplex is an industrial park. It's pretty much patterned, and we'd hoped would be as successful as Park 100 is for Pike Township. And the Park 100 is not in it, so when that started bustling,
We get
it
more
really
property
did.
tax revenue.
Right, and you have more balance. To pay for your schools, you have properties of all types putting in money to the pool. But in Decatur, we have very few businesses, or commercial businesses, and all of our industrials in the TIF, or pretty much all of it.
So less money for schools, less money for...
Mostly on the backs of the homeowners. And so it gets to the tax rate rises, because we still have to provide fire services to the industrial park, and that sort of thing. And that's one of the things is, if you talk to somebody about why you don't want to fill in a river, if somebody wants to fill in the banks of a river to put in some amenity, the water ends up rising a little bit in the river because it's now it can't expand out. And each time you do that, the water in the river itself rises a little bit because you're taking away some of the land that used to flow too. And so, I hope that analogy is good enough.
It's a metaphor.
But in a TIF, when you create a TIF, all those new buildings that come, whether they're from the floating the bond that the government floats, or the brand new development that might happen from private interests, they need schools for the children.
Oh, they need the same services.
They need fire protection. They need their streets paved. They need everything, and we all have to pay a little bit more to provide it to them because their property taxes are going somewhere. So if we would pay off all our TIF bonds, our taxes would drop.
So we're about at the end of the second segment. So ideally, though, if I could get myself declared to be a TIF, then I could have everybody paid to support me, and then I wouldn't have to worry about it.
No, you would still pay property taxes. Your property taxes, though, would go for a different purpose than everyone else's property taxes.
Gotcha. We're at the end of the second segment.
I mean, that's our infrastructure. That's as much an aspect of infrastructure to our country as anything else.